DC Comics is introducing a new type of kryptonite. More specifically, it's called the Kryptonite Spectrum. Here's the exciting part. This story starts with Superman basically telling us his origin. Now, we don't really need to go through that in detail. After all, it's Superman. You'd have to meet some ancient tribe that has never seen the modern world to find someone who doesn't already know Superman's origin story. What is cool about this is that he and Bot 35, one of the various robots that he has with him, are actually studying a piece of Krypton that they've come across. Not only that, this is actually made possible because Bot 37 had gone out there and secured that piece of Krypton. And so, one of the things that Superman does here, which may be unfamiliar to you, is he actually talks about the varying types of kryptonite that are out there, right? Green, as most of you guys know, ultimately kills Superman. He says that red makes him angry, but that's actually a newer adjustment in DC Comics. That black splits his brain into two, which again is a newer adjustment in DC Comics, and that gold takes his powers. And so, starting from the back and working our way forward, which by the way, this is not the new kryptonite that DC is talking about, just a teachable moment. Gold kryptonite is exceedingly rare, and in fact, depending on how it's used, it can permanently take away a Kryptonian's powers. It could permanently take away Superman's powers, and it does that by preventing him from being able to absorb yellow sun energy. Now, black kryptonite, much like red kryptonite, while it does have a kind of effect on Superman in the sense that it traditionally splits him in two, this is one of those instances where stories are told in such a way where they kind of dance around that idea, but they modify it. So for example, in Supergirl Volume 8, Issue number 3, Supergirl is exposed to black kryptonite and then she becomes a bad guy, right? She kind of becomes evil, for lack of a better word. Actually, it's done at the behest of Darkseid, specifically by Lex Luthor. But if you look at Batman Who Laughs number 1 from the Dark Multiverse, that it drives Superman and his son, Jonathan Kent, insane. They kill Lois Lane, then they kill each other. Now there is an argument to be made that the Dark Multiverse was a special case because it's a whole different multiverse where things act differently. But switching over to red kryptonite, red and green are kind of interesting because, for the Superman aficionados out there, you actually know that what we now consider to be green kryptonite and its effects on Superman actually started out as red. And in fact, it appeared in the old Superman radio show. Eventually it was changed to green, and red just wasn't seen for almost about a decade or so. But in 1958, Otto Bender brought it back, and that's the difference between the two. Most of you guys know the effects of green kryptonite, right? Ultimately kills Superman. When red kryptonite was introduced in 1958, it had random mutations on Superman. So it might give him telepathy, or it might make him forget who he is, or he might get translucent skin like he did in Tower of Babel, and he cannot control how much solar radiation that he absorbs, and he's in a constant state of pain. And so, the idea of him constantly being angry, that's a new change, but I felt like it was a good time to kind of explain these elements. But kind of focusing back on the story itself, one of the things that happens as they go through here is that Bot 35 tells him, like, what we are looking at is a vestigial piece of Krypton comprising 4 disparate, distinct pieces whose radiation levels and resultant hues are completely new to us. So 4 new versions of kryptonite, they don't really know exactly what color they are, specifically when you get it down in a yellow sun, because that can influence the color of things. And 2, they don't know what effect it's going to have on Superman. And so Superman kind of muses to himself, and it's like, damn, it's a good thing Lex doesn't know about this, because if Lex Luthor knew about 4 new versions of kryptonite, this guy would do everything he could to get his hands on it and kill me. And Lex Luthor knows. Lex Luthor always knows. Now the funny thing about this is that Lex Luthor only knows by way of observation, and he's told that much, right? He's informed by one of his scientists, Dr. Emil, that to the best of their knowledge, it's a cluster of unknown kryptonite variants. And Lex kind of gets pissed off, right? He's like, I mean, why didn't we detect this before Superman did, right? Why is that rock not here in this room in my hands right now? And one of the things that he's told is that all the LexCorp satellites run on a 15-minute delay, and so there was no way for them to actually even know it was there until it had been there for 15 minutes or so. And so that's why he's like, Superman Sentries beat us to the punch because they operate on a higher level of technology. And they detect things like that for that specific purpose. Superman is always on the hunt in some capacity for remnants of his home world. And so of course Lex Luthor does the most Lex Luthor thing. He basically tells Dr. Hamilton that when this is all done, he's fired. His 401k has been zeroed out, his office is being emptied, and that the pictures of his family, which aren't property of LexCorp, are being thrown away. But until this whole project is done, he needs to do the best of his ability, which is a pretty dick thing to ask, right? To basically pre-fire a person, but then have them continue to do their job until they're officially fired. That kinda sucks. So at this point, the story shifts over to Batman. Now, one thing you'll notice right away is that this isn't your usual Batman-Superman dynamic. I mean, yes, they're still friends, they know each other well, and they trust each other. But the way they interact here feels a little different. It's similar in some ways, but it has a unique tone. This comic feels like it's inspired by the old-school Silver Age comics, but without all the over-the-top, ridiculous stuff those stories sometimes had. No pun intended toward Batman. Basically, Superman reaches out to Batman and says, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" Batman tells him he's dealing with Professor Pig at the moment. Superman replies, "I could use your help at the fortress." Naturally, Batman's first reaction is, "You want me to travel to the coldest place on Earth right now? Really?" That's when we get this neat little detail. Inside the Fortress of Solitude, the temperature can be individually adjusted. So you could have two people inside, one person who likes it warm, maybe over 69 degrees, and sleeps with their feet sticking out from under the blanket, and another person who likes it cool, below 69 degrees, maybe even with a fan on, and keeps their feet tucked in. The fortress can make each of them comfortable at the same time. It's just a small detail, but it's a fun insight into how the fortress works. Back to the main point. Batman arrives, and right away, Krypto the Superdog starts growling and going after him. The reason is quickly figured out. Batman has a piece of green kryptonite on him. He always keeps some just in case Superman ever loses control. But Superman then shows Batman some new pieces of kryptonite, specifically purple, cobalt speckled, and rainbow kryptonite. Here's what's interesting. Usually, kryptonite gets its special effects from being exposed to different types of cosmic radiation, but these new forms all came from a single rock Superman intercepted. You'd expect them to all have the same effect, like just one big piece of cobalt kryptonite. But no. This is where the Silver Age style fun comes in. The comic is basically saying, don't overthink it, just enjoy the ride. Superman admits to Batman that he doesn't know anything about these new types and has no idea what they might do to him. Batman instantly realizes that Superman is going to ask for help testing them. At first, Batman's like, why not just destroy them and be done with it? But Superman explains two reasons why he can't. First, they're pieces of Krypton, his homeworld, and destroying them would be like Batman destroying something that belonged to his parents. Second, if more of these show up, someone dangerous might get to them first. He needs to know their effects so he can protect himself and others. It's a reasonable, logical argument. So they do what you'd expect. They start testing. Superman straps himself in and lets himself be exposed to the first one, Purple K. It has a kind of Byzantium-like glimmer, almost like a poisonous amethyst. Batman takes precautions, keeping the green kryptonite ready just in case. They expose Superman to Purple K, and at first, nothing seems to happen. But then Batman notices something strange. From his perspective, Superman suddenly says something like, "I'm going to make the Batman go away." Superman, confused, insists he doesn't know what Batman's talking about. It turns out Purple K is affecting Superman's mind, his hearing, his thoughts. He starts hearing weird, disconnected words and sounds. For example, when Batman says, "Your pupils are dilated," Superman hears, "I think my shoulder's dislocated." The bizarre part is that these aren't random hallucinations. Superman is actually hearing real things, just not in the right order. Batman says, "Solomon Grundy, born on a Tuesday," and Superman starts debating if Grundy was born on a Monday instead, based on the old rhyme. Then the story cuts to Lex Luthor. He has captured Solomon Grundy, who is one of DC's most underestimated villains. Grundy is dangerous enough to fight almost anyone, and when he became a Black Lantern, he was terrifying. Luthor's plan is to use Grundy as a distraction, so he can steal the kryptonite pieces while Superman and Batman are busy. Back with our heroes, Batman runs a brain scan on Superman. He explains that Kryptonian brains are more complex than human brains, but still have some similarities. Purple K seems to have overloaded Superman's hippocampus. the part of the brain that helps organize time. Normally, time cells fire in order, so we experience events in sequence. Now, Superman is getting flashes from different points in time, all scrambled. Batman shows him a calendar where all the days are out of order. At first, it just seems like harmless confusion, until they realize Superman is also seeing the future. While they're talking, Jimmy Olsen's watch alarm goes off, his emergency signal. Superman rushes to help, because Jimmy only uses it in real danger. He finds Jimmy and Lois Lane, but there's tension between Superman and Lois. He hasn't been around much, and their relationship feels distant. Superman starts seeing strange visions, like Lois saying, "I'm in my 40s, time isn't on my side," and even her breaking up with him. He explains to Batman that these moments are like pieces of a jumbled calendar, glimpses of the future mixed into the present. Batman warns him that if his perception is scrambled, he could attack the wrong person. Superman insists he can handle it. They go to fight Solomon Grundy, but from Superman's perspective, the battle is chaotic and out of order. One moment Grundy has Batman by the leg, the next Superman's face hurts for no reason. He keeps flashing back to details about Purple K's appearance and earlier conversations. Finally, they figure out Purple K gives Superman clairvoyance. He can see the future, but it's hard to control. He wonders if he's already won, or if what he's seeing is real or an illusion. Batman tries to help him focus, hinting that maybe the visions are always 11 minutes ahead. Superman eventually manages to control it enough to knock Grundy into space. Afterward, he's still unsettled about Lois, and tells her he needs to return to the fortress because the Kryptonite Spectrum has doubled. There were 4 kinds before, now there are 4 more. He has to study them to prepare for future threats. Batman tells him Purple K's effects will fade in about an hour, and that it only works under a yellow sun, like most kryptonite types except red. Then comes the dinner scene, except Superman's still mixed up in time. Lois talks about stress, wanting a baby and not being able to do this anymore, breaking up with him. But suddenly, she turns into Batman, who tells him the conversation already happened last night. Batman stores the Purple K in a lid case so it can't affect him anymore. Finally, Batman shows him the next piece to test, a dark bluish shard called Cobalt Kryptonite. As soon as Superman is exposed to it, he grows into a giant. It's pure Silver Age weirdness, and it's perfect.